As a hobbyist, the most exciting thing about this for me was actually the plug bases.
On the Obsidian side, you can deploy a giant gauze cannon, drop a 120mm base touching a table edge, and just do this line attack down the entire table. It's just all these like really cool, interesting effects that are, kind of on their own, and they all have very potent effects on the table.
They're hungry, they're pissed, and they're coming for you.
It doesn't feel like a movement tray, but it's effectively what it is. It just feels and looks really unique.
The rule book is quick, it's concise, it calls out its points with precision, and it makes the game very easy to learn.
There are few things better than stepping away from the screens, unplugging and sitting around a table to do battle with your friends. Every week, Third Floor Wars brings you the latest strategies, tactics, and reviews on board games, card games, and miniature games like Malifaux. If you want useful information on the games you already play, or new insights on great games other people are playing, you are in the right place. Craig and Ray welcome you to the Third Floor and the Tabletop Talk broadcast.
Craig here on the Third Floor, and today we have three guests trying to convince me that I should be playing The Other Side by Wyrd Games. Now, you might know our first guest, Joe, from the Coordinated Strike podcast. If you have not been listening to that or checking out Joe's YouTube channel, you're really missing out. I give Joe a ton of credit. He really was kind of the first person putting out any type of material for The Other Side. So, Joe, welcome to the Third Floor. Can you give us some quick background about you as a gamer?
Sure. I have been gaming for about 20 years now, all told, on the tabletop and off of it. I've been doing many, many podcasts throughout the years. You may remember me from such podcasts as Cheated Fates Radio. If you really go back, 40K Radio, I was a regular caller on that particular show back in its infancy.
Very cool. All right. Now, you might know our next guest, Kevin. He's part of the Dive Bar Gamers YouTube channel. They are also putting out some really good material related to The Other Side. So, Kevin, welcome to the Third Floor. Can you give us a little background?
Thank you. Yeah. I've also been gaming around 20 years since I was a wee little lad. Mostly RPGs and miniature games.
All right. Last but not least, Michael, who's Kevin's partner in crime over at the Dive Bar Gamers YouTube channel. Michael, welcome to the Third Floor. How about you as a gamer?
Hey, thanks for having me, Craig. I got my start in Warhammer Fantasy back in middle school, a little bit of Mark I War Machine, and then through Malifaux 1.0, I've mostly just been doing role-playing games, which is still the bulk of my time, but I do a lot of Malifaux and have been doing TOS with Kevin probably 2-3 times a week since we started playing it.
Wow, you guys have been getting some games in. What RPGs are you playing these days?
I run a 5th edition game bi-weekly. I do a Star Wars Force and Destiny game bi-weekly. I just finished up this year a 7-year-long Pathfinder game that Kevin was playing with us at the end. So
very cool. How did you actually finish it? Yeah,
start to finish from level 1 to 25 gestalted characters. It was a disaster.
Well, credit to you. I've done many an RPG and have never quote unquote finished one. They always just kind of died on the vine. So that's cool. And one of the things that I love about role-playing games, of course, is, setting that feeling and that theme. So that leads us very conveniently to come out of our first segment. So the idea here is that the three of you gentlemen have been really playing a lot of The Other Side. And then I consider the three of you probably the most active within the community as far as getting games in, though I didn't realize you guys were playing twice a week, so it's even more than I realized. So the idea is that I've got 50 script worth of Abyssinia. I've got 2 fire teams painted. I've yet to play a game, so I kind of want to hear from you guys why I should be playing this game. There's different things that get me into a game. The first thing that'll attract me to the game is the theme. So what's the setting? How does that setting, translate to the table? Does it feel like you're in another world when you're playing, or is it, just rolling dice or flipping cards? The other thing that I find interesting is what happens pre-game. So what kind of decisions are you making before your actual models actually hit the table? Decisions that really impact how ready you are to compete. I love finding out what happens in game. So there's a lot of games out there. And in order to attract my attention, I need something that's a little bit unique, something that's different. Part of the reason I've been playing Malifaux as long as I have is that there's a lot of in-game mechanics in Malifaux that I think are way ahead of other games. Last but not least, I love to paint. I love to build models, so we'll finish up by talking a little bit about the hobby. So before we get started, I went over to the website earlier today and wanted to kind of see what Wyrd Games says about the other side. So here's a little blurb about the other side. The Guild's iron-fisted grip on the Soulstone trade has worn Earth's nations raw, creating a powder keg of alliances and enemies. Just when a world war seems ready to erupt, horrendous creatures from a plane known as Malifaux tore their way through reality. The true battle of survival has begun. The Other Side is a game about allegiances doing battles across Earth in a fight for supremacy and survival. Using 32mm miniatures, players will control squads of troops, powerful commanders, and massive titans as they attempt to defeat their foes and seize control of Earth. Conflict is resolved through the use of decks of cards, allowing players more control over their destinies. The Other Side shares a world with Malifaux, but the games are not compatible. All right, so that kind of gives us a little bit of a feel, or gives me a little bit of a feel of the theme. Joe, can you kind of give us a little bit of a background of kind of the setting of The Other Side?
So from a setting perspective, the way I like to describe it is, we all know, most of your listeners, I assume, know Malifaux and know all about the Breach and going through the Breach to this awesome, insane Wild West world, Gothic horror world of Malifaux. But the funny thing about doors is they kind of swing both ways. And so the Other Side takes us back across the Breach into the world of Earth. So we have all the political intrigue you would expect of a 19th century technophiled society that has been just inundated with soulstones from Malifaux, highly technological, highly magical. And all of a sudden, there's this giant event in Malifaux where the Governor General tries to ascend to Titanhood, fails, and is thrown across the cosmos. Well, he lands above the city of San Francisco, and he begins to move all the way over to the city of London. And it is in the great city of London that all hell breaks loose. A giant portal, the biggest that has ever been seen, breaches between Malifaux and London. And it just so happens that this portal was on the depths of the oceans in Malifaux. And that happens to be where the denizens of the Gibbering Hordes live. So London is inundated with water and giant horrific abominations from under the sea that had been thrown out of Malifaux's land in a giant war with the Neverborn eons ago. So they're hungry, they're pissed, and they're coming for you.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I give Wyrd Games credit because it, I don't know, what makes Malifaux so interesting is the world of Malifaux, right? And to take their next game and bring it back to Earth, I thought was pretty creative. Michael, what is it about the theme that really kind of captures you?
I gotta say, for me, the theme of The Other Side that really gets me is just this clash of these four extremely different allegiances that embody very different themes. You have the soulstone-powered, super mechanized force that is Abyssinia. You have, the for king and country, King's Empire, that embody really well their muskets and bayonets. You have the crazed cultists that, jump through their portals and move all over the table like crazy. And then you have the horde of the Gibbering Hordes that just will not quit with their endless numbers. And I think they always, bring these core themes back to the allegiances in game very strongly. And I love that.
Yeah, I think that it's really neat that they, really differentiated themselves from their flagship game in that way. These are not things that we've seen in Malifaux. And, even though, if you've read the fluff of Malifaux, you've heard talk of things around this. But it's unique enough. And the theme is cool. I have to say that when I first heard that this was coming out, I was a little kind of, what the heck's going to happen here. And I think they did a good job, getting that feel across. But I think the big question, and Kevin, I'm going to ask you this. Do you feel like when you're playing the game that the theme hits the table? Or, does the theme kind of get you into the game, but it's all mechanics once you're playing?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think Mike and I have been playing through at least a couple of games with each of the different factions, and each of them feel very much true to their fluff. Abyssinia is bringing these big, muscly kind of machines and stuff and pushing around the other units on the table. Colts definitely feel very erratic, not just mechanically, but in the way you have to play them to get them to work on the table is really fun as well. And visually, the whole game definitely fits that epic clash between those two worlds. You get a couple of nice pieces of terrain on the table, and it really sings.
Yeah, it's beautiful on the table. Now, when you and Michael are playing, Kevin, are you guys playing at a game store or at the house? Or
we do a little bit of both. So we film mostly at my house. I have a small room where I have a 8x10 table set up, or a 4x10 table set up. And then every 3 Sundays or so, or 3 out of the 4 Sundays in a month, we typically try to play at the store on a regular basis.
And do you feel like you've been turning heads at the store as far as kind of the visual impact of the game?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I think the models speak for themselves. Just they're so gorgeous. The models, for the most part, the poses and everything are great. They really kind of draw the eyes in. And then once we have the eyes on us, playing the game really catches people. We have a lot of familiar faces from Malifaux 2.0 that have kind of branched off to different games in the meantime, are kind of looking back and getting interested and talking about buying new armies and stuff for the other side. That's
very cool. And Joe, I saw you did a test video at one point where you were doing the kind of a battle report, and that was at a game store, right?
Yeah, that was at a shop. That shop unfortunately closed, but I have found a new home at a store that I used to go to. So been kind of feeling the ropes there. It's not the best place to record. I have done a live stream or two from it. And we're going to get back into the recording here shortly, hopefully, with some new rig.
That's cool. And what is it about, like, when you have people come by and, check out the game, Joe, is there anything in particular that really draws them in?
Normally when we have the giant titans on the table, they really kind of get excited and it catches people's eyes immediately. Or if I have my gibbering hordes out, they kind of see these bizarre, almost Cthulhian type creatures on the table, and it really kind of just catches people's eye, and they have to stand for a second, kind of look at it, and they always ask, "What is this?" And so I explain what it is, and I mean, it's really something when we've got War Machine players at the store, we've got 40K players at the store. Nearly all of them are stopping over and looking. What's really interesting is the amount of RPG players that kind of stand up, come over, and watch for a while. And we kind of get to talk with them.
That is interesting. What do you think is driving that?
I think it's the fact that the visual is so impactful on the table, and the fact that you're not seeing a whole bunch of dice rolling, I think automatically catches people off guard because they're not used to a game that doesn't have dice.
Right.
And so I think the bizarre factor of that assists at least in getting people to say, "Hey, what is this?" Whereas if you see rolling dice, I mean, it could be 1,000 different things, and you're just proxying something, but when you see something as unique as this game where you have the multi-base, you have these giant titans, and then when you start talking to them about the fact that the hobby portion comes more in the painting and what you can do to the base than having to spend a lot of time assembling the models.
Yeah. I think it's a game that's relatively easy to get started playing because of the pre-assembly. So that's cool. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back from our break, we're going to talk a little bit about what happens pre-game, what kind of decisions are made before the models hit the table. So the theme brings me into the game. What's going to keep me into the game is what's, the decision making and how much agency the players have and how impactful those decisions are. There's really kind of two different frames that I put that in. One is, the decisions you make before the game. So before you've even hit the game store, your models have come out of the case. What are the different things? So, Michael, can you talk us through how you determine who wins the game? What are the win conditions for the other side?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a game of the other side, the victory points you get that determine the winner are primarily based on your operation, which is kind of like the mission, the scenario, or the strategy that you guys are playing. There are 4 operations in the book that are one player versus one player, and they provide you with a way to score your points during that scenario, counter your opponent's points during that scenario, and how to utilize the core resource of the game, tactics tokens, in order to sort of push that forward and move that along.
And you're both fighting. So there's four different operations, but you pick one operation for the game, right?
Yeah, and this is done through a seamless one-flip setup, which is a really fun thing about the game. You and your opponent each flip one card, and that determines who's going first, the operation, and what the deployment is.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Efficient, at least, right?
Yeah.
Now, is the only way you can score is via the operations, or is there other ways to score points?
There are some other ways. Some allegiances have other means of generating victory points. They have some stratagems they can leverage, and some even have some assets they can use. A good example is the Gibbering Horde has kill trophies, because they're all about getting in there and getting things bloody. If they go after high priority targets with that asset on them, they can score some victory points that way.
Oh, so that's kind of cool. So kind of the secondary scoring is really kind of faction and and now I actually don't know this. What do you call it? It's not a crew. It's not an army. What do you call
You call it your company.
Your company. Okay. So the different the company you bring to the table is going to potentially bring its own ways to score.
Yeah, and those are all very thematic. So we talked about kill trophies for Gibbering Hordes. Abyssinia has a fun one where you can bring a stratagem that if your commander dies, you get a victory point if your opponent kills them because they died with honor, which sort of plays into a lot of the themes that are important to Abyssinia and just kind of helps mechanically bring that theme back into the game.
And are these things visible to the opponent? So does the opponent know, what's going to potentially get you points, or how does that work?
In the case of the asset, it would be. The stratagems, when you build your stratagem deck of 6 cards at the beginning of the game, which are kind of like feats if you're familiar with how those work in War Machine, those are hidden from your opponent until you purchase them and put them into your hand.
I got you. But now, once you purchase them and put them in your hand, are they revealed?
Yep, you would tell your opponent that you purchased one of them, and you would plop it into your hand, and they know you have it, but they're not quite sure when it's going to come up.
Got it. But it kind of eliminates a little bit of the gotcha there, though, right? Because, they may not have known that was potentially something you were going to do, but they get a little bit of a heads up once it hits your hand.
Yeah, it all plays very organically, and it's very fluid. There's never really been any moments where stratagems have felt like a gotcha in any of the games that I've played.
That's a good thing. I like that. So, Kevin, let's talk about building a company. So you sit down, you and I decide we're going to play a game. How do you determine how the company is built? Like, what are the restrictions, the game sizes, things like that?
Yeah, so just like in Malifaux, you're building the company and crew based off of some already information that you would know beforehand. So you would know how big the game is, what the terrain looks like, and at that point you would determine what allegiance you're playing. So either like Gibbering Hordes or Cult. You would also declare your commanders at that time. After you kind of pick those guys, you determine the operation, and then you hire your company. So when you're actually hiring your company, you should know what your opponent's commanders are, what their faction is, what the table looks like, what the operation you're playing on. So you got a lot of information to work with in terms of choosing which models you think will best suit that job. That's something that you get in Malifaux in its own way, and I love that aspect. So I'm glad that they brought that over. Yeah, and it works great in this game too. Game size, like normally, how big is the game? Is it points or stones, or how does that work? It's usually 1 to 2 commanders. Each commander brings a certain value that you can use to purchase assets and units. For instance, most of them have around 25 script that they'll contribute to your army pool. Some of their bigger models, like Horomatangi, only have 22, but he's also a massive Titan model. He kind of offsets that with the strength of him being a commander himself. Oh, so okay. So pre-game, I wouldn't say to you we're going to play 50 points. I would say we're going to play 1 commander or 2 commander. Is that right? Yep. Okay, and then depending on which commanders I pick, that's going to give me the amount of script that I can use to hire the rest of my company. Yep. That's cool. So you may end up with technically different script sizes on either side, but that's part of the balancing mechanism, it sounds like, for the commanders. Yeah. If I bring Horror to Motangi, I should have less models, or less value in models, I should say. Right. That's cool. Joe, I mean, there's only right now there's 4 different factions. Can you give me an idea of how many models we're looking at for say a 1 commander or a 2 commander game? How much painting am I going to have to get done?
In a one commander game, you're looking at around 20 to 30 models. In a two commander game, you're probably looking between 50 and 60 models on the table.
If you're an athlete, you know the greatest motivator of all is the fear of letting your teammates down. After all, a team is only as good as its weakest link. So you owe it to those wearing the same jersey as you to be your best every time you step on the field. That's why there's no vape in team. When you vape, you can expose your lungs to toxic chemicals that can damage your lungs. If you're a step behind, the team's a step behind. Brought to you by The Real Cost and the FDA.
Okay, so it's kind of gets right up there with War Machine and 40K in that respect.
Yes, it's definitely a company-sized game, so you definitely get the epic feel of the game, again, tying back into its theme.
That's cool. How about, Joe, is there any other decisions pre-game that are important that we haven't covered yet, or did Michael and Kevin pretty much bring it all up?
Well, they talked a lot about the base game, but there's also a Fields of Glory, which is the organized play version of this, which brings into the concept of garrisons. So in garrisons, when you're going into a tournament, you're not going to have everything at your disposal. Much like a commander going into the field, you're going to have a limited amount of resources that you can bring in addition to your main list. The garrisons vary based on one commander or two commander. In a one commander scenario, you're going to bring 40 script worth of units and assets and up to two commanders. You're then going to build a single commander out of that available pool. In a two commander scenario, you're looking at 75 points or 75 script and up to three commanders, of which you're going to build a two commander list for each game in that scenario. So you get kind of the crew building that you have, crew building flexibility in Malifaux without having to cart everything in your collection.
That's nice. That's nice. And I would assume that kind of pre-game you get to you can check out each other's pool so you can kind of see what each other's playing with. Potentially?
Yes, you would have access to the pool ahead of time, but when you're actually declaring, the first thing you declare is simply what the commander is. You then build, or what your commanders are, and then you build your forces accordingly, and you reveal that placement.
Oh, okay. So when I'm hiring, I know what commander or commanders I'm going up against.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. That brings an interesting balance to it as well. And I would imagine, helps with rock, paper, scissors and hard counters too.
Yes. It helps immensely.
That's cool. All right. We're going to take another break. And when we get back from this break, we're going to get into really the meat of the game. So when you're sitting and you're playing the other side, what are some in-game mechanics that really make this game shine? All right, so the theme got me into the game. The pre-game stuff is pretty cool. You can definitely tell that there's, they've pulled some things from Malifaux, which isn't a bad thing because I think Malifaux is the best game out there. But it sounds different enough, so it's defined itself. Now we're going to get into actually playing the game. So what I'm looking for in an in-game mechanics for a game to attract my attention is I need something that's different and unique, not something that I get and I've seen before. So, Michael, can you give me something that really kind of makes the other side stand out for you when you're playing, as far as mechanically speaking?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely the stratagem deck that you build and pull from during the course of the game.
Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so when you're putting your company together, you get to go through the stratagems available to your company and whether you're Earth side like Abyssinia or Malifaux, like the Gibbering Hordes. And these have a plethora of different effects to them. From, on the Abyssinian side, you can deploy a giant gauze cannon, drop a 120 millimeter base touching a table edge, and just do this line attack down the entire table. Gibbering Horde can call down lightning bolts to strike their foes, and more damage if they're touching tide pools, because you don't want to be in water when lightning strikes. Cult can call the Burning Man down for a short period. He'll move around the table. You'll flip a bunch of random cards. Each shoot will have different effects depending on, what's going on there. King's Empire can use their espionage to the fullest to confuse an enemy team to have them do something they want, or even take an objective and move it. It's just all these really cool, interesting effects that are, kind of on their own, and they all have very potent effects on the table.
That's cool because normally you would see stuff like that, being built into the units themselves, but having them independent like that is interesting. And What are the restrictions as far as building your stratagem deck? Is there a certain limited number? You mentioned 6 cards, but can I bring the 6 most powerful cards, or is there a balancing mechanism in those 6?
Yeah, so you get any 6 you want, either from your faction or, like I said, if you're Abyssinia or King's Empire, there are kind of generic Earthside ones, and same for Cult and Gimbering Horde, they're generic Malifaux side ones. And they each have a tactics token cost to them from 1 to 6. And that sort of helps balance their effect, because those tactics tokens are the most important resource you have at your disposal in the game. You need them for everything.
Gotcha. So it doesn't just happen, right? Just because you have the card in your hand doesn't mean you can do it. You have to pay for it.
Yeah, you have to pay for it to put it in your hand, and then you can use it when you have the opportunity to activate a unit, but before you do so. Some of them even summon new units, so then you could go into that one if you wanted. Some of them go back in your hand when you're done with them if you discard a card. Some of them go back in the stratagem deck. The majority of them, I would say, once you use them, they're one and done, and they get removed from the game.
That's cool. Kevin, how about you? What is something about how the game plays that really turns you on?
I really like the plug bases. They add a lot to the game. They let you have a good size amount of models on the table, but not have to move a lot of stuff around while you're playing. And
can you kind of describe? Oh, I'm sorry. Can you kind of describe, because there might be people who have never seen these before, and they are really unique. Can you kind of describe what we mean by plug bases?
Sure. So each model in the game is on a 30, 40, or 50 millimeter base. And in some cases, those get slotted into a much larger base up to 120 millimeters. You can have 3 or 5 of those on those 120 millimeters, and they kind of sit on that like a movement tray almost. And squads are usually made up of 1, 2, or 3 of those big movement bases, and that is what you use to move around the table with.
Yeah, you know what? I never thought about it, but movement trays or movement bases are a really great way to describe it. But what I think is neat about it is it doesn't feel like a movement tray like an old Warhammer Fantasy. They feel, and I don't know why. Maybe one of you guys can tell me why, but it doesn't feel like a movement tray, but it's effectively what it is. It just feels and looks really unique.
Yeah, I think a part of that is because everything on that movement tray functions as a individual unit almost. And when you're activating that unit, you get 3 of them. So you're basically activating 3 kind of almost models, or at least that's how it feels when you're playing.
That's cool. That's very, very cool. All right, Michael, Kevin talked about tactics tokens, and can we kind of walk through what's going on there?
Yeah, so tactics tokens are your main resource in the other side. And this is my favorite thing, because for me to like a miniatures game, it has to have some sort of resource management aspect to it. And tactics tokens are your stratagems, like we talked about. They're how many cards you get in your hand at the beginning of a turn. They're your ability to do your objectives and capture markers on the table. You need them to coordinate strike in and out of units. They are everything, and you will never have enough of them during the course of a game. And it really feels like you are, commanding this company, and that these are the resources you have at your disposal with which to wage war. And it's not enough. It's not enough for you, but it's also not enough for your opponent. So whenever you use one of them, you have to think very carefully.
I love that type of decision making that's A, not easy. B, has an impact on the game. And I love that feeling, right? That you want to do 3 things and you have enough to do 1. And, what is that one going to be? So that is very, very cool. Kevin, talk to me about game length. How many turns is a normal game, and how much time does a normal, say, 2-commander game take?
Each game lasts, I believe, 5 turns. I don't think there's any operations that extend beyond that. And then for game times, ours is usually around an hour and a half, so 90 minutes. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little less, depends on how the turns go. And
how about learning curve? So either you or Michael, how hard was it for you guys? I assume you kind of learned it together, seeing you've been playing together. What did you feel about the learning curve to going from I've never played the other side to, we can sit down and without even really touching the rule book, maybe but once or twice, we can get a game out?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty standard for us. We took to it quickly. There's some terminology in there as a Malifaux player that's pretty easy to recognize and catch up on. The rule book is quick, it's concise, it calls out its points with precision, and it makes the game very easy to learn. It's been easy to teach to people, and if you've ever encountered those sort of people that are very interested in Malifaux and they play it a few times and they just feel like the depth of Malifaux is something that's a turnoff for them, it's just as easy for those people to pick up and play this as well.
Do you consider kind of Malifaux light? I mean, is it not as deep as Malifaux? Not that that's a bad thing.
I'd say it's not as wide, but it's taller, if that makes sense. So there's a lot you can use to sort of pinpoint and streamline your decisions and what you're making and how you approach scenarios. And the decisions you make in game matter a ton. There's a lot of emphasis on that. There's just not as many rules that contribute to that.
Got it. Yeah, it's Malifaux can be intimidating for new players. It's one of the things that I think that they're trying to fix here with this third edition. And if they don't have that problem out of the gate with the other side, I think that's a real good thing. All right, we're going to take another break. And when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite subjects, which is how do you hobby with the other side? Okay, the last thing. So, we talked about what's going to attract my attention. We've talked about what's going to, make me enjoy playing it. But the reality is what's going to keep me in a game is the hobby aspect. So, Kevin, can we talk about, kind of the sculpts, the painting? We can't talk about building, right? And I really would like to kind of find out your thoughts about, how to really leverage those plug bases because it's so unique to the game.
Like you said, they're all pre-made. There is a little bit of cleanup work to be done on them, but other than that, you can pop them onto bases right at the store and play right when you get them, which is really nice. It's really good to introduce new players into. But once you start getting hobbying, they really start shining. Just like Malifaux, the concept artists that work on the game are fantastic, and they develop these really nice concepts with really interesting models that you don't really see in other games. And then they're usually sculpted pretty true to those concepts, and they show up on the table looking beautiful.
I was impressed with the sculpts, especially for pre-built miniatures, and for the material that they're built in. It's not your normal, injection plastic. It's a little bit more like kind of the Guild Ball plastic, for lack of a better word. But they get some really good detail. And, to your point, Kevin, there's some gap filling. So I couldn't, if I wanted to, be as anal as I can be about modeling, they did take a little bit of work, but I wasn't taking 3 different pieces off of 4 different sprues to build a head. So that was kind of nice. But how about for painting, Kevin? Is there anything about it that you've enjoyed?
Yeah, the models themselves have a lot of space for kind of customizing how you want them to look. They take different paint schemes very well. In terms of painting, they take spray paint really well. Yeah, I think the crispness of the models and stuff that, like you said, and that nice kind of soft but not quite soft plastic lets you really take to different techniques and stuff with painting well.
Joe, talk to me about the plug bases. What do they offer for us as being a hobbyist?
So as a hobbyist, the most exciting thing about this for me was actually the plug bases. I don't know if you're familiar with a fantasy battle game known as Kings of War, where they utilize fixed base sizes and fixed units. It allows for some of the most amazing diorama style basing that you can possibly do. And the fact that we have a set movement tray essentially on the table that is going to then be filled with our unit. And that is going to move around the table and be whole for as much of the game as possible, really lets you do some dynamic things from a basing standpoint. You can make as elaborate a diorama piece as you want, as long as you can remove the models from it. Or if you want to do like we used to do in some of the playtesting, just have like a die that counts down the wounds. However you choose to do it, it really lets you do some cool things. Like you can have a scene where you've got walls built up. I've seen people do cobblestone city scene bases. I've seen and done myself like a desert scene or a beach landing scene, those type of things. It really lets you kind of embrace the setting, and your whole army can kind of tell a story with the way that you can do these plug bases.
Yeah, I've been having fun. I've been doing kind of a jungle theme with the Abyssinia, and it is cool. It is very, very cool. All right, let's go into closing arguments, gentlemen. Joe, I need your top 2 reasons why me or anybody else should be playing the other side.
You should be playing the other side because, in my opinion, no game has a better marriage of theme, mechanics, and gameplay. You're playing a game that is about flipping to glory, all about trying to get to the other side of your card. It's called The Other Side, and it really immerses you in the game itself. It's mechanically very, very easy to get into, but there's a lot of depth once you get in there. The systems are simple, but the result is kind of like a symphony.
That's cool. That is cool. How about you, Kevin? What do you think are the main reasons someone should be playing this game?
Yeah, the strategic depth is so well articulated in the game system, while also providing a framework that's not mentally fatiguing. So we've played a couple of tournaments already, and at the end of the day, I want to play more. And I don't think I can say that about many miniature games.
Well, I can tell you, I can't say that about Malifaux, because when I get done with 3 rounds of Malifaux, like, my brain hurts. And granted, it's part of what I love about the game, but that's interesting that you can still get that depth without making it hurt. That's cool. How about you, Michael? What are your closing arguments?
My big 2 are flavor and function. So throughout the entire game, there's so much on everything that's flavorful, from amazing things to yell in the middle of a game. I think pretty much the basement of my store has heard me yell Eureka when I flip my units into glory, or buzzsaws for days shouted across the store. And in function, just everything works very nicely, very well, very smoothly. And although it has this amazing tactical depth to it, it's a game that someone who has never played a miniatures game before can jump into with relative ease. It's a system that's not wide, it's tall, and it's deep. And it's all about maximizing the way that you play and growing as a player instead of memorizing more rules. And I think that's really beautiful.
That's a huge selling point. All right, guys, I have to say the 3 of you make a pretty good case here. Let's go ahead. Michael, if people want to spend some more time with you or get some more material from you, where should they go?
Yeah, me and Kevin have a YouTube channel, Dive Bar Gamers. We also have a Twitter for Dive Bar Gamers, so you can do the Twitter at us or check out our YouTube videos. Hopefully we'll have some more up this weekend.
Yeah, I've been watching them, Michael. They're looking real good. And guys, we'll have links in the notes so you can get both follow them on Twitter and as well as go to the YouTube channel. Joe, talk about what you're putting out.
So I have a podcast, Coordinated Strike. We are the #1 podcast for The Other Side. As far as I'm aware, we are the only podcast for The Other Side.
Just stay with #1, Joe. That's good.
True, fair and balanced is what I always try and go for, and that's kind of the vibe that we have on the show. It's a one-man show, so it's a little different than some of the stuff I used to do. So I encourage everyone to check it out. It has been a ton of fun to do the show, and I look forward to doing more of it.
Yeah, it has been your podcast, Joe, has been the definitive resource, I think, on The Other Side, and hopefully the game gets more and more players, which means you will probably see some more podcasts devoted to it. But you're first, and it'll be tough to unseat you as far as I'm concerned. And we'll have links both to the podcast and Joe's YouTube channel, so that you guys can check that out. Gentlemen, I really appreciate you all taking the time, and I will let you know what I think after I get all of these things painted up. To force myself, I signed up for the tournament at Nova. So, and I have a hard rule about unpainted models. So I've got a lot of work to do this summer. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to rate and write a review on this podcast so we can find more people almost as cool as you are. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube by searching for Third Floor Wars. That's THIRD. We'll catch you next time on the Third Floor.